I didn't grow up believing evil had a zip code. My town is the kind of place people point to on a map, only to explain where they're really from. We've got one main road that turns into two without warning, a grocery store that smells like wet cardboard, and a diner where the coffee tastes like it's been reheated since the last decade. Folks leave their keys in the ignition. Kids ride bikes after dark. People say hello like they mean it. I used to mean it too. The first body didn't change that right away. It should have, but it didn't. It felt like a freak accident, a story for the news that would keep our quiet place entertained for a week and then fade. It was a dog walker who found her. A woman named Marissa, who lived behind the church and always waved at me from her porch. The dog pulled hard into a ditch along the service road, like it had caught a scent it couldn't ignore. Marissa followed, yelling at it, tugging on the leash. The dog wouldn't let go. They said she was posed. They said it like it was a fact you could put on a form. I didn't see her then. I only saw the roadblocks and the cops turning people away with tight faces. My neighbor, Phil, stood on his lawn watching the commotion. Phil is the kind of man who knows everyone's schedule, not because he's nosy, but because he's lived here too long to be surprised by anything. "This can't be us," he said. He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to the air. 2 days later, the county coroner's van came back to town. Then again. After the third, nobody was saying it couldn't be us. People started saying other things, things that sounded worse. They had a name for him by then. Not an official one. Our local paper never used it in print. And the police hated it. But it stuck anyway. The Orchard Man. We have apple orchards on the outskirts. Long lines of trees that look harmless until you stand between them and realize how many places there are to hide. The bodies were found near those trees, not inside them, not deep, but close enough that you couldn't separate the idea of fruit and rot anymore. I wish I could tell you I was smarter than everyone else. I wasn't. I did what people do. I locked my doors and kept living. And then my brother disappeared. I'm not telling this because I think it will stop anyone. I'm telling it because I can't sleep. And because I need it out of my head. And because people are still living here like nothing can reach them. His name was Evan. He was younger than me by 3 years, and had the kind of face that made strangers smile back. He did small, forgettable jobs, delivery, mowing lawns, running errands for older neighbors. Everyone knew him, which was part of the problem. The night he vanished, he was supposed to bring a bag of groceries to Mrs. Kellerman, the widow who lived at the end of Maple Street. It was a simple thing. He did it all the time. He texted me earlier, asking if I wanted anything from the store. I replied with a joke. He sent back a laughing emoji. That's the last record I have of him being alive. Mrs. Kellerman said he never showed. She said she waited at the window until it got too cold to keep watching. And then she ate crackers and peanut butter and went to bed. When she called in the morning, confused, I assumed Evan had forgotten. I drove to his place. His truck was in the driveway. The groceries were still inside it, warm items already sour. His front door was unlocked. Evan wasn't the kind of person who forgot to lock up, not after the bodies started turning up. I stepped inside with my phone in my hand, thinking I'd find him asleep on the couch. What I found was small and wrong. His shoes were by the door, but he wasn't barefoot in the house. His jacket was on the chair, but the pockets were emptied out like someone had checked them. The living room looked normal if you didn't stare too hard. The TV was off. The throw blanket was folded like he never used it. Then I went into the kitchen. There was a plate on the counter with 2 slices of bread on it. No filling. No knife. Like he'd started making a sandwich and got interrupted mid-thought. The refrigerator door was open. The cold air hit my face, sharp and clean, and it made the hair on my arms rise. Inside, everything was neat. Milk, eggs, leftovers in plastic containers, and a space where something heavy had been moved. Not taken, moved. I called his name. Nothing. I walked through the hall toward his bedroom, and the house felt like it was listening. It wasn't the kind of silence you get at night. It was daytime quiet, the kind that makes you realize how loud your own breathing is. His bedroom door was ajar. I pushed it open. The bed was made. Evan never made his bed. That's when I knew I wasn't alone in this, whatever it was. I backed out. I didn't go further into the house. I didn't open the closet. I didn't check under the bed. I left like a coward, because I suddenly understood that if there was something in there, it had already decided how this would go. I called the police. They came fast. Too fast. That should have comforted me. It didn't. A detective named O'Hara took my statement. He was older, tired-looking, and he smelled faintly of stale gum. He asked me when I'd last seen Evan, whether Evan had enemies, whether Evan used drugs, whether Evan had a girlfriend. I told him the truth. Evan's biggest enemy was boredom. O'Hara wrote it down without expression. When I tried to mention the serial killer, his eyes flicked up. "We don't have a serial killer," he said. I stared at him. "3 bodies," I said. "3 investigations," he replied. That's how they talked about it, like the bodies were paperwork. For the first couple days, people were kind. They offered casseroles and sympathy. They said Evan would come back, that he probably took off to clear his head, that he'd show up with a sheepish grin. By day 3, people stopped making eye contact. By day 5, I overheard a woman at the diner say, if he was mixed up in something. By day 7, the town had adjusted in the way it always adjusts, by deciding it happened to someone else. I didn't adjust. I started driving. I drove the back roads around the orchards, the service roads near the river, the empty lots by the old factory. I stared into ditches and fields, like I could pull Evan out of the earth by force of will. I told myself I was looking for him. Really, I was looking for proof. I needed something that would make it real, because the not knowing was worse than any answer. On the 9th day, I got my proof. It didn't come in the form of a body. It came in the form of a bag. It was sitting at the edge of my driveway when I got home from work. A plain black garbage bag, tied at the top. It looked like any bag you'd put out for collection, except it was too clean, too careful, as if it had been placed there rather than dropped. I stood on my porch staring at it. I checked the street. No one. Just the late afternoon haze and a couple leaves skittering along the pavement. My neighbor's blinds twitched. I walked down the steps. I didn't touch the bag at first. I crouched next to it and listened. Nothing. I could have called the police. I should have. But something in me thought, if this is for Evan, it won't wait politely for paperwork. I grabbed it. It was heavier than it looked. I carried it inside and set it on the kitchen floor. The plastic crinkled under my fingers. I untied the knot. The smell hit me first. It wasn't the smell of a dead animal. It wasn't rot. It was sharp and chemical, like cleaning supplies, like someone had tried to scrub something away. Inside was another bag, clear, sealed tight with tape. In that clear bag was a single thing, Evan's wallet. I recognized it instantly. He had a sticker on the back from a gas station that said, "I love road trips." He'd put it on as a joke and never took it off. My hands shook as I pulled it out. There was no money in it. No cards. Only one thing inside. A folded piece of paper. I unfolded it. It was lined notebook paper torn from a spiral. The handwriting was careful, blocky. "Your brother made a lot of noise." That was it. No signature. No threat. Just a sentence. My stomach dropped like I'd missed a step on a staircase. I sat on the kitchen floor with the wallet in my lap, and my mind tried to reject what it meant. It tried to imagine a prank, a cruel joke, anything. But the handwriting didn't look like a kid's prank. It looked like someone who took pride in being understood. I called O'Hara. He came with 2 other officers. They photographed the bag and the note. They put the wallet in an evidence bag like it was a dead insect. O'Hara asked me if I'd told anyone about Evan, if I'd posted on social media, if I'd gone on the local news. I said yes. He sighed. "Sometimes," he said, "people do things to get attention." I stared at him until he looked away. After they left, I sat alone in my kitchen and realized something important. The killer knew where I lived. The killer wanted me to know. From that day on, I stopped pretending I was safe. I bought stronger locks. I put a chair under the doorknob at night like I was a kid scared of monsters. I kept a baseball bat by my bed, and I listened. Not for taps, not for footsteps, nothing that neat. I listened to the change in the town's sound. When fear moves in, it changes everything. Dogs bark more. People drive faster. The empty spaces between houses feel wider. And the orchards stopped looking like trees. They started looking like teeth. 2 weeks after Evan vanished, they found the 4th body. It was a teenager named Lila, who worked at the ice cream stand in summer. She'd been walking home from a friend's house. Her parents thought she'd cut through the park. She never made it. This time the police couldn't keep it quiet. They held a meeting in the high school gym. The whole town showed up, packed into the bleachers like we were there for a game. The mayor spoke first, sweaty and shaking. Then the sheriff. Then O'Hara. O'Hara stood at the microphone and told us to be careful, to travel in groups, to lock our doors. He said they were pursuing leads. He said they were working around the clock. He said what people always say when they don't have answers. Someone in the crowd shouted, "Is it the Orchard Man?" O'Hara's face tightened. "We don't use that term," he said. "But is it?" the voice demanded. O'Hara paused too long. The gym went silent. Then he said, "We believe these incidents may be connected. Connected. Like a chain." I sat there thinking about the note. Your brother made a lot of noise. It wasn't just a message. It was a complaint. Evan had fought. The thought made me sick and proud at the same time. After the meeting, I waited until the crowd thinned and cornered O'Hara near the doors. I told him about the wallet, about the note, about how it was left on my driveway. His eyes flickered with something like irritation. "We have that," he said. "It means he's watching me," I said. "It means someone's messing with you," O'Hara replied. I leaned in. "Do you have anything?" I asked. "Do you have a suspect? A vehicle? A pattern? Anything?" O'Hara looked past me at the crowd. "We're not going to discuss details," he said. I wanted to grab him by the collar and shake him. Instead, I stepped back. "Evan is dead," I said. O'Hara's jaw clenched. "We haven't found your brother," he said. "Then find him," I snapped, "because I'm done waiting." O'Hara's expression hardened. "Don't go out looking," he said quietly. "People who go out looking get hurt." There was something in his voice then that felt real. That night I couldn't stop thinking about what he'd said. People who go out looking get hurt. Was he warning me because he cared? Or because he knew the truth and didn't want another body on his desk? I started doing something I'm not proud of. I started reading the police scanner. There are apps for it now, clean and easy, like ordering food. I listened while I cooked dinner, while I lay awake, while I tried to work. I learned the codes for accidents, for domestic calls, for suspicious persons. I learned what fear sounds like when it's trying to stay calm. One evening, I heard O'Hara's name come over the scanner, followed by an address. It wasn't mine. It was Evan's. I didn't think. I grabbed my keys and drove. When I got there, the street was lined with police cars. The lights painted the houses red and blue, like the neighborhood was being bruised. Officers were moving in and out of Evan's house carrying bags. I parked half a block away and walked up. An officer tried to stop me. I told him who I was. He looked uncomfortable but let me through. Inside, Evan's house looked disturbed, not trashed, not ransacked. It looked arranged. Furniture was moved slightly, not enough to be obvious, but enough to make you trip if you were in a hurry. The picture frames on the walls were turned a few degrees off-center. In the kitchen, the plate with the bread was gone. The refrigerator was closed. O'Hara stood in the hallway holding a flashlight, his face pale. "What happened?" I asked. He looked at me like I was a problem he didn't have time for. "We got a call," he said. "Neighbor heard glass." I glanced around. "Where?" O'Hara pointed. Evan's bedroom door was wide open. I hadn't looked inside before. I looked now. The room was clean, almost sterile. The bed made tight. The floor vacuumed. And on the bed, centered like a gift, was a cardboard box. My heart hammered. O'Hara stepped in front of me. "Don't," he said. "What is it?" I asked. He didn't answer. Two officers were suited up in gloves and masks, careful like they were handling something fragile. One of them cut the tape on the box. They opened it. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. It was wrapped in plastic, layers and layers, something irregular inside. Then the officer peeled back the plastic. It was a hand, not fresh, not dripping, cleaned, the skin pale and waxy, the nails clipped, the wrist cut straight, like it had been done with a tool meant to make clean cuts. I gagged. O'Hara grabbed my arm, steadying me. "It's not confirmed," he said quickly. "We don't know it's his." But I knew. On the ring finger was a faded scar in the shape of a crescent. Evan got that scar when he was 10, when he tried to climb a fence and slipped. I was there. I laughed at him, and he punched me in the shoulder. The scar never went away. My vision tunneled. The room swayed. I heard myself making a sound that didn't feel human. O'Hara said something into his radio. Officers moved around me, guiding me out of the room, out of the house. On the porch, the night air felt too cold, too clean, like it didn't belong. I sat on the steps and stared at the police lights. Someone handed me water. I couldn't drink it. The killer hadn't just taken Evan. He'd brought him back in pieces, and he'd done it neatly. That's what made it worse. Brutality is one thing. Care is another. The next day, the news broke wide open. The sheriff finally said the words everyone had been waiting for. "We believe we are dealing with a serial offender." They still didn't say serial killer. In town, people reacted in the ways they always do. Some got angry at the police. Some got angry at the victims. Some got angry at anyone who talked about it. And some, too many, got curious. They drove out toward the orchards to see the places bodies were found. They took photos of the police tape. They treated it like a haunted house attraction. I stopped going to the diner. I stopped going to work. I stopped answering calls. I sat in my house and stared at the walls. Every creak sounded like someone moving. Every car that slowed down outside made my stomach clench. I started sleeping in short bursts, sitting up, bat within reach. When I did sleep, I dreamed of a box on a bed. Then I got a message. Not a note this time. An email. It went to an old address I barely used. I only checked it because I was looking for something. Anything Evan might have sent. The subject line was blank. The email contained a single attached photo. I stared at it for a long time before I clicked. The photo loaded slowly. It was dark, grainy, like it had been taken on an old phone. At first I thought it was a room corner, a wall, a floor. Then my eyes adjusted. Evan was in the photo. He was sitting on the floor with his back against a wall. His face was bruised, one eye swollen shut. His mouth was taped. His hands were bound in front of him. But he was alive. Or he had been when the photo was taken. The camera flash caught something behind him. A shelf, maybe, with jars lined up. I leaned closer to the screen. In the background, on the shelf, were clear jars with labels. My blood ran cold. The labels were neat strips of paper with block letters. I could read one, Lila. I could read another, Marissa, names, like preserves. I slammed the laptop shut. I didn't want to see more. I did anyway. I opened it again and stared until my eyes burned. Evan's face in the photo wasn't just scared. It was tired. Like he'd been made to understand something. I forwarded the email to O'Hara. I called him until he answered. His voice was sharp. "Where did you get that?" he demanded. "It came to me," I said. "Don't touch anything," he said. "Don't reply. Don't." "I'm going to find him," I said. There was a pause. Then O'Hara said, "No, you're not." His tone wasn't anger. It was fear. "Listen to me," he said. "He wants you to react. He wants you moving. That's how he controls the story." "My brother is in a basement somewhere," I said. "You want me to sit here?" O'Hara exhaled. "We're tracing it," he said. "We have people on it." I laughed, short and ugly. "You have people on it," I repeated, like you had people on him when he left a hand in a box. O'Hara's voice went quiet. "I'm trying to keep you alive," he said. That was the first honest thing he'd said to me. I hung up. Then I did the one thing I told myself I wouldn't do. I replied. I wrote, "Where?" I stared at the screen for a long time after I sent it, waiting for lightning to strike, for my door to explode, for something to happen. Nothing happened. Not right away. Hours passed. Then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. No need to shout. I stared at it. My fingers went numb. Another text. "You and your brother have different temperaments." I swallowed. I typed, "What do you want?" The reply came almost instantly. "I want you to understand." I didn't know how to respond. My mind ran in circles, trying to figure out if this was a trap, a game, a way to pull me out. I typed, "Let him go." The reply, "He is quiet now." My vision blurred. I typed, "Is he alive?" No reply. Minutes passed. Then, "I left you a map." I stared at the message, my throat tight. I hadn't seen any map. I went to my front door. I checked the porch. Nothing. I checked the mailbox. Bills. Junk. Then I looked down at the doormat. Under the edge, barely visible, was a folded piece of paper. My hand shook as I pulled it out. It was a crude map drawn in pen. Not artistic. Just lines and squares. A few landmarks labeled in block letters. The diner. The church. The orchards. A route traced in a thick line. At the end of the route was a circle. Inside the circle was a word. BARN. My stomach clenched. There are barns all over the outskirts of town. Old ones. Collapsing ones. Ones people use for storage. There are barns nobody remembers until they pass them. This map was specific. It led to a patch of land off Old Quarry Road. I knew it. Because my dad used to take us out there to look at deer when we were kids. There's a barn out there that leans like it's tired of standing. I looked at the map. Then I looked at my phone. I should have called the police. I should have driven straight to the station and shoved it in O'Hara's face. But all I could think was, if I call them, He'll hear it on the scanner. He'll vanish. He'd already proven he could get into Evan's house. He'd already proven he could leave things for me. He was inside the town like a worm inside fruit. If I wanted Evan back, if there was any part of him left to bring back, I had to act before the killer got bored. So I did something stupid. I went alone. I dressed in dark clothes. I put the bat in my trunk. I grabbed a flashlight. I told myself I was being careful. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I drove out of town with the map on the passenger seat. The roads got narrower. Streetlights disappeared. The trees crowded in. The orchards came into view, long rows of black shapes under the sky. I kept driving. Old Quarry Road is the kind of road you take only if you have a reason. It's patched and cracked. The shoulders drop off into weeds. There are no houses, no mailboxes. When I saw the barn, my hands tightened on the wheel. It was worse than I remembered. The roof sagged. One side had caved in. The doors hung crooked. I parked a distance away, engine off. For a moment I sat there listening. The world outside was quiet in a way that felt unnatural. No insects, no wind. I got out. The air smelled like damp earth and old wood. I walked toward the barn, flashlight in hand, trying to keep my breathing steady. The ground was uneven, dotted with stones. When I reached the doors, I paused. The wood was splintered, dark with age. I pushed. The door groaned open. The smell inside hit me like a wall. Not rot, not animal. Something else. Metal and bleach and something sweet underneath. I stepped inside. My flashlight beam cut through dust. The barn was mostly empty, just old equipment covered in tarps, a broken ladder, a pile of hay turned gray. Then my light caught something hanging from a beam. A chain. My stomach tightened. There was a hook on the end. It swung slightly, as if it had been moved recently. I forced myself to look away. I moved deeper into the barn. My flashlight swept across the floor. There were marks in the dirt, drag marks. My mouth went dry. At the back of the barn was a trap door. I didn't remember it from childhood. It was covered by a piece of plywood with a rusted handle. I stared at it for a long time. My mind screamed at me to leave, but my body moved anyway. I grabbed the handle. It was cold. I lifted. The trapdoor creaked open. A hole yawned beneath it, leading into darkness. A ladder disappeared down. The smell rose stronger. Bleach. And that sweet, sick scent I couldn't name. I shone my flashlight down. The beam picked up concrete walls. A floor. A light bulb hanging from a wire. And something else. A shape. I climbed down. Each rung felt like it would snap. The air grew colder as I descended. When my feet hit the concrete floor, the sound echoed. The room was larger than I expected, like someone had dug out a space under the barn. There was a table. There were shelves. And there were jars. Rows and rows of them. My flashlight caught the labels. Names. I recognized some. People I'd seen at the grocery store. People who had smiled at me. The jars contained things wrapped in gauze and plastic, suspended in clear liquid. I couldn't make myself focus on what they were. My mind kept skittering away like it was trying to protect me. Then I heard a sound, a soft scrape. I froze. It came again, not from above, from behind a curtain in the corner. A heavy tarp hung there, like someone had divided the room. My throat tightened. I raised the flashlight. "Evan?" I whispered. No answer. I stepped toward the tarp. The scrape came again. This time it sounded like something dragging against concrete. I reached out and grabbed the edge of the tarp. My hand shook. I pulled it aside. Behind it was a smaller space. A chair, a bucket, and Evan. He was slumped on the floor, wrists bound, ankles bound. His head was hanging forward. For a second, my heart surged. Then I saw the way his body sat. Too still, too heavy. His skin was pale. His lips were tinged a dark color. I dropped to my knees. "Evan," I said. His head lolled. His eyes were half open, unfocused. A thin strip of tape still covered his mouth, peeling at the edges. I touched his shoulder. He was cold. Not just cool, cold. My chest tightened until I couldn't breathe. And then, Evan's fingers twitched. I jerked back. My brain couldn't process it. His fingers twitched again, weakly. A sound came from his throat, muffled by tape. He was alive. Barely. His eyes shifted toward me. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from sobbing. I fumbled with the tape, peeling it off gently. His lips were cracked. He tried to speak. Only a rasp came out. I leaned close. "Evan," I whispered. "I'm here. I'm getting you out." His eyes fluttered. His gaze moved past me, toward the shelves, toward the table. He made a sound like he was trying to warn me. I turned. On the table was a notebook, open, a pen beside it, like someone had been writing and stepped away. My stomach dropped. He wasn't gone. Not far. I reached for Evan's bonds, hands shaking. They were tight. I tried to untie them. The knots were complicated, deliberate. I looked around for something to cut with. On the shelf beside the table was a toolbox. I grabbed it and flipped it open. Inside were tools arranged in careful rows. A saw, pliers, a box cutter. My hand closed around the cutter. I turned back to Evan. That's when the light bulb above us flickered. A shadow moved across the far wall. My heart stopped. I heard footsteps on the ladder. Slow, unhurried. Someone climbing down like they had all the time in the world. Evan's eyes widened. He made a choking sound. I looked up. A man's boots appeared at the top of the ladder. Then his legs. Then his torso. He climbed down without looking at us at first, like he was finishing a routine. He wore work clothes, jeans, a jacket, gloves. His face was in shadow until he stepped onto the floor. When he did, the light caught him. He wasn't what I expected. He wasn't hulking. He wasn't covered in scars. He looked normal. That's what made my stomach twist. He had a plain face, short hair, the kind of face you'd forget the moment you turned away. Except his eyes. His eyes were calm, not cold in a dramatic way. Calm like he was watching a thermostat. He looked at me, then at Evan, then back at me. "Good," he said. His voice was ordinary, like he was greeting a neighbor. "You came," he said. I stood, box cutter in my hand. My arm shook. "Let him go," I said. He smiled slightly. "I did," he said. I stared. Evan made a weak sound behind me. The man tilted his head. "You're loud," he said to me. "Like your brother." My skin prickled. "Why?" I demanded. "Why are you doing this?" He looked mildly surprised, like he hadn't considered the question interesting. "I'm not doing anything," he said. "I'm keeping." He gestured to the jars. "People disappear," he said. "They're forgotten. They rot in the ground. That's a waste." My stomach churned. "You cut them up," I said. He shrugged. "Pieces last," he replied. Evan whimpered. The man's eyes flicked toward him. "Quiet," he said. The word wasn't loud, but Evan flinched like he'd been hit. My anger surged. I stepped forward with the cutter. The man's gaze returned to me. "Careful," he said. "That's sharp." I lunged. I don't know what I thought I could do. I don't know what part of me believed I could overpower him. He moved faster than I expected. He stepped aside and grabbed my wrist. His grip was strong, trained. He twisted. Pain shot up my arm. The cutter clattered to the floor. He shoved me back hard. I hit the shelf. Jars rattled. One fell. It shattered on the concrete. The liquid splashed. Something wrapped in gauze rolled across the floor. I didn't look closely. I couldn't. The man's face changed for the first time. Not rage. Annoyance. Like I'd knocked over his coffee. "Clumsy," he said. He stepped toward me. I scrambled, reaching for anything. My fingers found the pliers. I swung. It caught his shoulder. He grunted. Not in pain, more in surprise. His hand shot out and grabbed my hair. He yanked. My scalp burned. He dragged me toward the table. Evan made a sound like a sob. "Stop!" I shouted. The man's voice stayed calm. "This is what you wanted," he said. "To see." He forced my face toward the notebook. I saw scribbles, lists, names, dates without years, places, little notes in the margins like grocery reminders. One line stood out. Noise level. High. It was next to Evan's name. My stomach dropped. I twisted, trying to break free. The man tightened his grip. "You don't listen," he said. His breath smelled faintly of mint, like he'd brushed his teeth. I saw something on the table then. A small syringe. My blood ran cold. He picked it up with his free hand. "No," I said, voice cracking. He smiled slightly. "It helps," he said. I kicked backward. My heel struck something. The bucket, it tipped. Water or something spilled. The floor slicked under his boots. His balance shifted. Just enough. I wrenched my wrist and grabbed the cutter from the floor. I slashed, not at his throat, not at his face. I wasn't brave. I slashed at his forearm. The blade cut through his glove. He hissed. His grip loosened. I yanked free and ran toward Evan. I dropped to my knees and started cutting his bonds. My hands shook so hard the blade skittered. Evan's eyes were wide. He tried to help, but he was too weak. Behind me, the man moved. I heard him step, then stop. I didn't dare look. I kept cutting. The rope gave. Evan's wrists came free. I moved to his ankles. A sound like fabric tearing. The man's voice. "You broke my things." I looked up. He was holding a long, thin tool from the toolbox. Not a knife. Something used for work. Heavy. He advanced. I stood stepping between him and Evan. My knees trembled. My mind screamed again. "You are going to die here." But another thought pushed through. If I die, at least he won't do this alone. I raised the cutter. The man paused. His eyes flicked to Evan, who was trying to crawl away. Then back to me. "You should have brought help," he said. I laughed, jagged. "You should have stayed hidden," I shot back. For a moment, something almost like curiosity passed over his face. Then he lunged. The room exploded into motion. I dodged left. His tool swung past me, hitting the shelf. Jars shattered. Glass rained down. The smell of that clear liquid filled the air. I gagged. I swung the cutter wildly. It sliced his jacket. He grabbed my arm again. Pain flared. He twisted, trying to disarm me. I bit him, hard. His forearm jerked. His breath hitched. He made a sound of disgust. He shoved me away. I stumbled. Behind him, Evan was moving toward the ladder. Slow, dragging himself. I shouted, "Go!" The man turned his head. And that's when I saw it. His fear. Not fear of being hurt. Fear of being seen. Fear of losing control. He moved toward Evan. I sprinted after him. I grabbed the back of his jacket. He spun. His fist hit my face. Stars burst. My nose exploded with pain. Warm blood ran down my lip. I fell. My head struck the concrete. The world tilted. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard Evan's ragged breathing on the ladder. Then the man's boots, climbing. He was going after Evan. I forced myself up. My vision blurred. I grabbed the bat from where I dropped it earlier near the trapdoor. I don't remember picking it up. I must have carried it down without thinking. I staggered to the ladder. The man was halfway up. His boots on the rungs, Evan's hands above him, weak. I swung the bat. It struck his ankle. He grunted. His foot slipped. He caught himself. I swung again. This time the bat hit his shin. He cursed. His calm broke. He kicked backward. His boot caught my shoulder. I stumbled, but I kept swinging. The bat hit bone. He lost his grip. He fell, not far, but enough. He landed hard on the concrete. The sound was dull. He lay still for half a second. Then he moved. I raised the bat again. His eyes snapped up. For the first time I saw panic, not theatrical, real. He scrambled backward. His hand reached for the syringe on the table. I lunged and brought the bat down. It hit his hand. The syringe skittered away. He screamed. It was the first loud sound he'd made. It echoed in the small room. Evan was above, crawling out. I grabbed the syringe and threw it across the room. It shattered against the wall. The man stared at me with hate so sudden it felt like a physical thing. "You ruin," he spat. I didn't respond. I didn't have words. I just swung the bat again. This time I hit his shoulder. He cried out. I hit him again. Not because I wanted to hurt him, because I was terrified he would stand back up. Because I could already imagine him calm again, rearranging the room, turning us into labels. I hit him until my arms burned, until he stopped moving. Then I dropped the bat. My hands were slick with my own blood. My breathing came in gasps. I stared at him. His chest wasn't rising. I didn't feel relief. I felt hollow. Above, Evan's voice called down, thin. "Get out." I forced my legs to move. I climbed the ladder. The rungs cut into my palms. When I emerged into the barn, the night air hit my face like a slap. Evan was on the floor, half outside the trapdoor, shaking. I grabbed him under the arms and dragged him out. He weighed almost nothing. We lay on the barn floor, gasping. I fumbled for my phone. My hands shook too much to dial. Evan's fingers closed weakly around my wrist. His eyes met mine. He tried to speak. Only a whisper came out. He kept talking. Evan rasped. "What?" I asked. Evan swallowed. Like he was normal, he said. Like he was explaining how to fix a machine. My throat tightened. Evan's gaze drifted. I tried to be quiet. He whispered. I pressed my forehead to his. "You did," I said. "You did." His eyes closed. His body sagged. Panic surged. "Evan!" I shook him. His eyes fluttered. He whispered, barely audible. He said he'd keep you too. Then his eyes rolled back. I screamed his name. I don't remember calling 911. I don't remember what I said. I only remember the sound of my own voice, raw and broken. The ambulance came. So did the police. So did O'Hara. When the lights hit the barn, it looked small and pathetic, like a place kids might dare each other to enter. O'Hara saw Evan on the stretcher and his face tightened. Then he saw me. My bloody hands. My swollen face. He looked past me toward the trapdoor. "Did you go down there?" he asked. I stared at him. "Yes," I said. He closed his eyes briefly, like he was praying. "Jesus," he murmured. They swarmed the barn. Officers with flashlights, cameras, evidence bags. I watched from the back of an ambulance while a paramedic cleaned my face. The paramedic's hands were gentle. He asked me questions to keep me awake. What's your name? Where are you right now? How many fingers am I holding up? I answered like a machine. I kept thinking about the jars, about names on labels, about Evan's scar in a box, about the man's calm eyes. And I kept thinking, he had been in town this whole time, buying groceries, smiling, maybe sitting in that diner while people whispered about him. When O'Hara finally came to the ambulance, his expression was different. Not irritated, not guarded, defeated. We found him, he said. I blinked. The guy? I asked. O'Hara nodded. Name's not in our system, he said. No record, no ID on him, but we'll figure it out. I swallowed. And the others? I asked. O'Hara's eyes dropped. We found evidence, he said carefully. Evidence. That word again. I almost laughed. Did you find them? I asked. He hesitated. Then he said, not whole. The paramedic's hands paused. I stared at O'Hara. Did you find what he did? I asked. O'Hara's throat moved. He looked away. Yeah, he said quietly. A shiver ran through me. Not because I needed details, because I could imagine them. The town didn't celebrate when the news broke. There was no cheering, no relief. Only a kind of stunned quiet. People went back to their routines like they had been holding their breath and didn't know how to breathe normally anymore. Some tried to turn it into a story they could tell later. Others refused to talk about it at all. The diner put up a sign that said, "Thank you, first responders." The paper ran a headline about closure. I wanted to burn the paper. Because there was no closure. There was only damage. Evan lived. That's the part people like to hear. They think it means there's a happy ending. It doesn't. Evan spent weeks in the hospital. He had infections, dehydration, broken bones, things that sound clinical until you see your brother shaking in a hospital bed, eyes too big in his face. He didn't talk much. When he did, it was in fragments. He told me the man would bring him food and water like he was taking care of a pet. He told me the man would sometimes go silent for long stretches, just watching, like he was waiting for Evan to do something wrong. Evan said the worst part wasn't the pain. It was the normality. He'd hum, Evan whispered once, voice thin, like doing chores. I nodded and held his hand. I didn't tell him about the jars. He didn't need that. The police eventually released a name. It didn't mean anything to anyone. A man who'd lived in a rented trailer outside town for months, working odd jobs. He'd been seen at the hardware store. He'd been seen at the grocery store. He'd been seen walking along the road like he belonged. No one remembered his face. They remembered his calm. People started recognizing him in strangers everywhere. Every man in a work jacket looked like him. Every quiet smile became suspicious. The orchard stayed. You can't cut down acres of trees because you're scared. but people stopped buying apples from local stands. Kids stopped doing hay rides. Families drove past the rows of trees faster, eyes forward. As for me, I moved. I left town a month after Evan came home. Not because the killer was gone. Because he wasn't. Not really. He stayed in the way my hand shook when I unlocked my door. He stayed in the way I flinched at the smell of bleach. He stayed in the way Evan stared at corners like he expected someone to step out. He stayed in the way our town changed without admitting it. Sometimes when Evan is having a good day, he tries to make jokes again. He'll say something like, "Remember when we thought the worst thing that could happen here was the power going out?" I'll laugh because it's what you do. But later, when he's asleep, I'll sit in the dark and think about that man's eyes. How calm they were. How ordinary. How easy it was for him to be there among us. And I'll think about the notebook. About lists. About noise levels. About names on jars. I'll think about the way he said, "Pieces last." And then I'll think about the part no one wants to hear. When I hit him with that bat, I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like I'd stepped into his world. Like I'd done something that belonged down there in that room. And I still don't know what that makes me. People in town still tell the story sometimes, usually in softer versions. They say the killer was caught. They say justice was served. They say it's over. They say Evan was saved. They leave out the parts that don't fit neatly. Like how the police found other maps in his notebook. Routes drawn with thick lines, circles labeled with words. More barns, more sheds, more places people don't look. Like how some of those circles were crossed out. Like how others weren't. Like how, when the sheriff announced the killer was dead, he didn't mention the one thing that made O'Hara's hands shake when he spoke to me in the hospital hallway. He said they'd found a second notebook, a newer one, with fewer names, and one line written at the top, "Not alone." I asked him what it meant. O'Hara stared at the floor. He said, "I don't know." Then he looked up at me, and for the first time since Evan disappeared, he looked like a man who understood what fear was. He said, "But if you stay here, you're going to keep listening for footsteps that don't exist. You're going to look at everyone's hands. You're going to wonder what's behind every closed door." I didn't argue, because he was right. I left. But leaving doesn't mean it stops. A few nights ago, months after we moved, I came home to find a plain black garbage bag sitting at the edge of my driveway. It was clean. It was tied neatly. I stood on my porch staring at it, my heart hammering. I told myself it could be anything. Trash blown from somewhere. A neighbor's mistake. A sick coincidence. I didn't touch it. I called the police. They came, cautious, flashlights cutting through the dark. They opened the bag. Inside was nothing. Just empty plastic. A prank. Or a warning. The officer told me it was probably teenagers. He told me to relax. When he left, I stood alone in my kitchen and stared at my hands. I thought about the word in that notebook. Not alone. I thought about how easily someone could place a bag on a driveway. How easily someone could watch. How easily someone could smile and be forgotten. Then I went into the bathroom and scrubbed my hands until the skin turned red. It didn't help, because some things don't wash off.